Morning everyone, and welcome back to this, the second in our series of 3 webinars. It's now the 27th of August, and today we welcome Greg Hart from Mangarara Station in the Hawke's Bay to talk to us about some of the fantastic things he's been doing to regenerate the health of that station. Greg, great to have you along. Really appreciate you taking the time. Mike Green's going to work through a series of questions with you, so I'll leave it over to you guys. Many
Greg,
thanks.
thanks for making the time. Welcome to the discussion. Could you give us a little bit of background really on Mangarara and how you got involved and on the trajectory that you've been on over the last, it's quite a while now. I'll let you get into that.
Cool, thanks Mike, and yeah, g'day to everybody. It's good to see a few faces, and quite a few of you have been to the farm before, so but a bit of a brief overview of Mangarara, which is 600 hectares of sort of mixed rolling hill country in central Hawke's Bay, and we've been on that property for since 1996. Rach and I came back to the farm, so coming up 30 years, and my parents had shifted up from the South Island in 1990, so a big change from growing up on the flats of mid-Canterbury near Methven and then up to the hill country. And I was overseas at the time that they made that move, but when I came back, had a couple of years working with the livestock exporting industry, and then a wee stint down in Palmerston North as a grain marketing manager for Hodder and Tolley, but always wanted to get back to the farm. And so when the opportunity came up to buy a property next to mum and dad's place, my wife Rach and I chucked in everything that we had, and sort of with the support of my parents bought into that place. And then it was probably another sort of getting on for 7 or 8 years after that. We've been in the process of buying the farm off my parents. So, again, appreciating, how fortunate we are that we had that pathway into the farm. And but yeah, it's a real privilege that we certainly don't take for granted. But yeah, just love Mangarara and love sharing it with people. So yeah, Mangarara at the moment is we're running about just under 700 cattle. Just over recent years, we've gone from at one stage we had 3,000 breeding ewes. Now we've got about 30, and largely cattle, and that's been probably for about 10 years now on this holistic planned grazing journey, which is a lot easier for me to manage with cattle than it is with sheep, and because we can do that behind a single electric wire. We've got good power pretty much around the farm and improving water systems, and so that has simplified the job a whole lot, and just enjoy moving big mobs of cattle daily, if not a couple of times a day. So over that time, we also realised that humanity is on a very unsustainable trajectory. I guess that awareness has sort of grown over the last 20 years, and then also realising that agriculture, and particularly how we grow our food, is the #1 solution to most of these issues. And so as that awareness grows, I guess it has been nearly 20 years now, sort of walking a path and afoot in the current paradigm that we're living, in our market-led economy, but also understanding that that's not sustainable, and something that's not sustainable will end at some stage. And so we definitely are thinking about the future. And I guess it really, to have a clear picture of vision of where you want to go is really, really beneficial. And obviously there's lots of winds and turns in that road, but we do have this vision that we wanted, just understanding that particularly New Zealand being the last big land mass that was inhabited by humans, and just so 1,000 years ago, just turning back the clock and thinking what this place would have looked like. And I can just imagine it would have been this beautiful, balanced, ecological paradise where everything was in harmony and working with nature. And so in the brief time that humans have been on this land, and things have gone about as out of balance as we can, and so the journey is to try and restore that balance. With 5 million people, living in this country now, but all about returning to that balance. So is that bit of an opener, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of places we can go from there, obviously. In terms of re-energizing the system and the changes and transformations that have occurred within yourselves and Mangarara over the last 30 years, I guess one of the questions that springs to mind from an agriculture perspective would be, how do you reconcile the desire to farm within, say, a natural systems boundary, based on the fact that farming was never something that would have occurred naturally in New Zealand? How do you kind of navigate that space between running a profitable farming system and maintaining that balance with nature when you're effectively imposing a system upon nature within farming?
Yep, that's fair enough. I guess it starts with a budget, because if we're not profitable, then we're not going to stay in business for long, and so budgeting is a really important part of it. And unfortunately, I imagine in all of our lives there are compromises, and but with the vision that, I guess, when Europeans arrived in New Zealand, that they did pretty much just foist a European mindset onto the New Zealand landscape. And over time, we have been trying to restore that balance through probably a large tree planting program as one of the major signs of that, and partnerships with Air New Zealand and with other organisations and businesses like that. That is, I think we're up to about 154,000 trees planted, and another 10 hectares of natives planted on sort of steep eroding hill country this winter. So that's the efforts that we do to restore balance. But then again, although cloven hoofed animals weren't part of the New Zealand landscape when we came here, we are using those animals but trying to look at, as everyone here will be well aware of the sort of savoury philosophy of animals on a landscape, and using them through their grazing and through trampling of pastures but using trying to mimic natural systems like that. That's kind of how we balance the humans' need for food with trying to care for the environment and the landscape.
Yeah, great. Look, I mean, that was a pretty tough one to sort of start off with, but I think the thing about sustainability is even sustainability needs sustaining. So, within a farming system, we need to, I guess the point there is that we live within a continuum, don't we? We live within a series of conflicting priorities. And I just want to open up the concept of context. It seems to me, I mean, your context might be slightly different from something that is a lot more sort of industrially focused. And one of the great things about talking with you about some of this stuff is that I know that your context is a lot bigger than that. And in terms of re-energizing the system, when you think of the system on Mangarara, how would you define's not the right word. How would you describe what the system might be within a Mangarara context?
Well, I guess my interpretation of Regen Ag is putting life at the centre of every action and every decision that we make. And so really, our goal is all about optimizing life. And so putting that into the framework, and as I said before, trying to weigh up the compromises and do as little damage where we have to do damage, but it really is life centric. And I guess that is the guiding principle. And the more life that we can create, obviously, beginning in the soil and having healthy biology in the soil, but then diversity of pastures, albeit we don't do a lot of cultivation and regrassing, but we're doing a lot of silver pasture agroforestry, which is bringing life back, and then obviously insects and birds, and then having the farm open to the public, and with the lodge on the farm, it just creates a whole lot of diversity and a whole lot of life which really makes it an exciting place to be.
Yeah, great. I mean, and where I'm going with the question, I think, is that so many people within agriculture are farming in somebody else's context. You know, they're farming in Fonterra's context, or beef and lamb, or within the wool industry, or, you know, somebody else, or the bank's context. And those are the things that are driving the decisions, and therefore affect, if you like, the energy flows within that system. Do you want to talk a little bit about the diversity and the way that you sort of capture energy within the Mangarara context, if that's not too sort of ethereal of a question? Do you kind of see where I'm going with that question?
Not sure, Mike, because I mean, obviously we live within the economic boundaries.
Yep.
And as I say, you know, doing budgets and staying profitable is I guess where it all begins. But yeah, I guess you know, beyond that, it is incorporating as much diversity as we can, you know, which is the trees, but operating really, I guess, you know, the thing that Mike and I have talked a lot about over time is understanding that humans largely are energy blind, and understanding the amount of particularly fossil fuel energy it takes to run not just, you know, our farms and our lives, but, you know, the whole economy is just basically mirrored on energy. And we suspect that the fossil fuel energy inputs will be reducing over the coming decades. And I mean, I think we're already seeing that with what's happening with gas in New Zealand. And so the scramble to you know, add inputs and stuff like that. But you know, that is I think, you know, where we're going is also, you know, looking at a lower energy future and what that might look like, and you know, which is for us as localizing a lot of what we do, just, you know, lives being a lot more local. I guess, you know, we are trying to find local markets for our produce, and yeah, just a whole lot less inputs in the farm that are coming from further away, just to try and build resilience and take out some of those, you know, costs which seem to be getting higher and higher on the back of the race to the bottom of a whole lot of resources and fossil fuel energy.
Yeah. We're probably going to circle back to energy. Can you describe, if you think about diversity on farm for you, I mean, I live on the edge of the Waikato, and, you know, I can drive across to, say, Hamilton or Cambridge to see Hugh or what have you, and it doesn't strike me that there's a lot of diversity on those fairly intensive dairy systems in that area there. There's quite a lot of inputs. Can you describe what diversity you've managed to create on your place that probably in lots of ways you take for granted when you think about it? But what is the nature of the diversity and the let's just leave it at that. What's the nature of the diversity that you've created there with the different systems that you've got going on your place, Greg?
You know, again, the engine of the farm really arrives as around cattle production and beef, but you know, within that, you know, the other big thing is really probably a lot of, you know, the tree planting we've done, and the agroforestry silver pasture systems that are working really well on the farm now. And that diversity, you know, the other things that we're doing is diversifying income on the farm, which is, okay, so beef cattle, trying to direct market, then, you know, lodge, accommodation, education space, trees, carbon income coming in at the moment. So that's sort of diversifying things a lot. And then taking out some of the costs, you know, just having a few pigs on the property, and the chickens, and the, you know, that move around. And you know, I guess a lot of that is around just permaculture thinking. Did a permaculture course back in 2010, which is just, you know, trying to, you know, think about having things that complement the system, so one complements the other, and trying to create more of a circular economy. And obviously, as a lot of you guys know, been quite influenced by Joel Salatin over the years, and Joel talks about, you know, stacking enterprises on the farm. And you know, again, just the understanding that New Zealand farms run quite well, not simplistically, but just perhaps based on sheep and beef and big farms, and how many families that's supporting, is realizing that we could be producing a whole lot more. It complicates the system a lot, including other people onto the farm, into the landscape, and into businesses. But again, my view of a lower energy future is that we are going to have more people living on the land close to where their food's grown, and so those enterprises, again, we've got a little dairy which isn't being used at the moment, but the view there that that's another enterprise that somebody could use for rearing calves, milking a few cows, and again just creating resilience by providing milk and dairy products for people living on the farm. So there, and again, I guess with the trees that we've planted, there's lots of fruit and nut trees, as well as timber is another thing that we're looking at. We've got a little sawmill. Again, haven't got anybody to help me work that at the moment, so it's a bit underutilized. But the view is that there is so many opportunities to create more businesses, more livelihoods for people on the land. So lots of diversity going on at the moment, and I think we're only limited by our imagination for what we can do in the future.
Yeah, I would add to that your agrihood and also the opportunity for market garden that you've got in there. There's also there's people who come up onto the farm there to shoot ducks, who have an interest in the in the way that part of the ecosystem, if you like, is managed. I don't think I've been on that many farms where I've seen the kind of diversity that I would see on a place like yours, and the way in which you've embraced that in some ways in a counter narrative kind of way, where in a traditional system people would be driving for a single product and focusing very much on industrialized monoculture production. So in terms of resilience, what has that meant to your system by being able to create that kind of diversity? Because of course resilience relates to energy as well.
I guess like one of the early things, and Hugh alluded to it last week when we were talking about Charles Massey and that book, The Call of the Reed Warbler, and his study looking at regenerative farmers around Australia, and so many of them had gone through some life-changing event, which for me, I think, and so many of people that are in the regen movement have had some challenging sort of time or entrance into it, but part of it is like evolving beyond ego. And I think this is humans' journey at the moment, is if we are to to go forward to the future and thrive and prosper in the future, then really we do have to evolve beyond our egos. And I guess that's a long journey for all of us, but you find more of those people in the regen movement, and humility is huge. And I think the thing that has helped us on our journey really is getting over ourselves a little bit and opening up the gate, and that is opening up to partnerships with others, and which has enabled us to do a whole lot of things that we couldn't do by ourselves, just off the back of what we earn off a sheep and beef income. But it has been partnerships, and that means that you don't have so much control, and you do have to let others into the business, and but by working together, we can achieve so much more. So that's a tough one. And Mike, you alluded to the agrihood. Guess that is a work in progress at the moment. We have had permission from the council to subdivide a dozen sections on the front of the farm, and again, just with that view that in a changing world, we are going to have to localize and have more people living on the farm, and it's very much an experiment. It's not done yet. Hopefully we'll get the report back from engineers this week about road building and water management and everything like that, which again is, to me, based so much on last century thinking and big engineering industrial type process where we want to arrange something with a really light footprint on the land. But yeah, there's just to create, a regen hub. Part of that goal with the agri-hood would be to have people coming in with a kind of a regenerative type business in mind. That could be something that's land-based, but it could also be, in the form of a consultant, health, education, but something that, just with a mindset of having a positive impact on the planet. So we'll see where that goes. It's obviously going to be a long and again, a few challenges, no doubt, as we complicate our life working with more people. But I think that has to happen. And again, New Zealand is in this incredible position where we do have this environment that is generally pretty kind, and we can grow our food and so I just sort of feel like if New Zealand can't transition to a more sustainable, regenerative way of living, then no one in the world can, because we've just got this opportunity, and so we're sort of setting ourselves up as a bit of an experiment, really, to see what that might look like.
I mean, I know that your vision for the land and the community that you're looking to create, and localization and those kinds of things, is huge. Particularly, I just got to commend you in the way that you have taken ego out of the equation to be able to invite other people onto your farm. That would be completely different from the way that other people might view their properties in a more, for want of a better word, industrialized sort of system. I can't think of a better word. It's not conventional, is it? But let's just call it, single focus on production. How you've also done that in terms of some innovative funding solutions as well, where you've looked at how the farm might be funded differently. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because funding for a lot of farms is energy as well. I mean, you take the funding out of most farms and you've just killed the energy. So what does that look like on your place, Greg?
Yeah, money is energy, isn't it, Mike? So it's a holder for energy.
Yeah.
The obviously a relationship with Air New Zealand was really great back in the early days, back in 2008, when we formed a partnership that lasted for 3 years in a budget that resulted in 85,000 trees being planted. But again, if I go back into a bit of sort of woo-woo, is that I just really do find, and it's repeated with a lot of people all around the world, the more you start working with life and nature, doors do open up, and so with that view of trying to have a positive impact and working with nature to create more life, then it's crazy some of the coincidences and that can pop up. And so and I guess that's just being open to it, and being open to hear others' views, and of course pushing it sometimes too. That does require a few phone calls and knocking on a few doors, but those relationships have been fantastic, and what starts off as sort of a business thing often ends up as a personal friendship and relationship. So recommend, and there's people not from farms are looking at ways of connecting with farms, and so I think there is lots of opportunities if we do work with people in town or with other businesses and stuff like that. So I'm sure there's lots of opportunities, and encourage people to just keep asking questions, and don't be afraid to contact someone and say, like I did with Air New Zealand. I just rang up the 0800 737 000 number and just said, I've got an idea about planting trees on the farm, and it just opened doors. So encourage everyone to not be afraid to have a go.
Do you want to talk a little bit about, or could you talk a little bit about taking the rest of the debt out of the farm, and the relationship with Chris, and the advantages and perhaps some of the challenges that has brought?
Yeah, well, again, I guess building resilience is a huge part of what everyone on this call is involved with as that's part of Regen, is that resilience. And so if I looked at, where our greatest risks are on our farm, I guess one of them is the product prices that we receive. And so we've tried to mitigate that one by direct marketing. And for the last 5 or 6 years, we have just been supplying butcher shops. So we've basically been getting the same price, for our beef for 5 years now. And although it's not always the top price, at least it's something that we can budget on. And so that has changed. So we're back into remodeling our marketing program at the moment. But then the next sort of one was our debt at the bank and fluctuations in interest rates, which is obviously biting a lot of people at the moment. And so we wanted to get rid of our bank debt. It wasn't huge percentage, but it just puts pressure on having that bank debt. And so I had a friend that I went through university with who's had a capital investment company, and just mentioned to him, and so they were in a position to put together a little syndicate, and I think there's about 7 or 8 sort of families or groups that have bought a 25% share in the farm. And so our friend Chris Tremaine is now on the board of directors for Mangarara, which is just basically my wife Rachel and I and Chris. So it's we have monthly or bi-monthly meetings, and just run over the whole business and where it's all going and what we're doing. And at this stage it's been great. All but one of the investors in that syndicate are good friends. We knew most of them before they all signed up, but now it's a real kind of family, and we have an annual AGM and get together with the shareholders, have a lot of fun. And then within that group there's people with a whole lot of different business skills, and so I'm able to tap into them and get advice on different parts of the business. So again, that's been a thing that's been really good. They are very much in support of our whole regenerative philosophy, and so it was sold to them that they're not going to be earning the same return on their investment as what they are probably getting in a lot of their commercial building investments and stuff like that. But there's so much other value that we can bring in other than financial when we talk about environmental and social, and just the connection that they have. And a few of them have young families, and just part of bringing those families out on the farm, and just that connection with the farm and with the land, and dare I say it, with the farmers.
Yeah, I guess that's where I wanted to go. I mean, most people, when we talk about regenerative and energy, are focusing on the sun and plants and conversion and soil and things like that, and that's a vital part of it. But just taking a wider boundary view on what regeneration looks like and energy looks like within a farming system, you've taken a very non-conventional approach to that. I mean, the idea of taking debt out by bringing in shareholders to who would then, that you would actually have to willingly incorporate into the decision making within the farm, I think would be quite a challenging kind of decision to make for a lot of farmers in more of a conventional system. So I guess that's why I wanted to explore that a little bit more, and talk about what those social implications of that is, because I imagine that some people, the last thing in the world they want is other people talking to them about how they should be farming and doing what they're doing. You've gone the next step. You actually have people who are financially invested in your farm, who have ideas around what you could be doing. And those, I mean, while the final decision's down to you, there's a lot of input into that. So once again, we're back to ego and how to try and manage that, aren't we, with respect to what does regeneration look like within your context?
Yeah. Although I do think
sorry. So just before, if I could just remind people that if they've got queries or questions, just bang them in the chat as well, just to remind people. So sorry to interrupt.
No, all good. The structure's pretty good though. That works for us. Is we don't have to answer at our meetings to all 7 or 8 of the shareholders. They've got a representative on the board that represents those shareholders. So that's pretty appealing, just how that works. Obviously, I've got good relationships with all of them, so you can have a yarn. But as far as the business and structure, it all goes through the one representative that they have on the board. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, no, that's cool. That would just be a fairly innovative and non-traditional way of, well, in fact, it is a traditional way, but it's a non-conventional way of how profitable farming is conducted in New Zealand in the current context. So once again, more of that wider boundary context around what regeneration looks like. How do you and Rach and I guess Chris, because he's part of the farming structure there now, how do you ensure that your own needs are met around energy and staying energized within your own system?
well, I guess like personally, obviously, there's techniques that we can all use to keep ourselves energized, but I guess we do have a holistic goal for the farm, and again, that made it a whole lot easier to get the investors on board, is because we do have this clear holistic goal for what we're where we're heading and what we're about, so that they knew what we're getting in. And then again, we haven't had to use it, but there is obviously the holistic decision-making process for checking that we do stay true to those goals. And I mean, if there was any variation to what we'd set out in our holistic context, then that is something we'd have to consult with the shareholders about. But really, as long as that vision is clearly laid out and everybody knows where we're going, and I guess the agri-hood was as a bit of, obviously, a deviation from our regenerative farming kind of approach, but that was something that was flagged to the shareholders before they got in, that we're looking to do that. But again, it will be done with budgets and making sure that it works for everyone.
So once again,
sorry, Mike, just Kurt had a question.
Yeah, I see that. Can I oh no, let's just go straight to Kurt's question now, because it's a real timely one. Kurt, do you want to unmute yourself, mate, and ask away?
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Any of the shareholders, work in the business, like, are they a shepherd or, have any other businesses within your business?
Good question, though, Kurt. Yeah, and certainly appreciating where you're come from. It is, it gives you that opportunity. Hey, and I mean, shit, I'm not getting any younger, and so there is, I guess, when you've got that company structure, the opportunity to for a manager to build up shares in the property. So totally, yeah, think that's a great idea. But at this stage, I'm the labourer or the manager worker. We do have a shepherd on the farm with us. But I mean, the other crazy thing is, and a few farmers might appreciate this, having worked probably all my life on the farm I don't think I ever earned $20 an hour. It was closer to, just minimum, just living fees. I'm on a salary now, which is quite bizarre, having lived all my life without a salary. So that's been a really good thing as well. But yeah, opportunities for others to and people, managers, to get a share of the business.
Thanks for that, Kurt. It was a great question, and thanks, Emily, for that, for getting Kurt in there. The reason, what I was going to say there is, in the direction I've been heading here, is that I think you can see that when you consider what a fairly conventional farm looks like, the context in which you're operating, Greg, is the context is very, very wide boundary and very diversified, with a lot of interaction, a lot of pieces in that, and a lot of potentially conflicting interests within that. So the effort that's gone into creating your context, do you want to talk a little bit about that, Greg? Because context is everything within any kind of land-based farming system, or any kind of system, really.
Yeah, well, I guess, again, that's where that holistic management course that we did, in the same course as Malcolm and Twix, back in, I think it was about 2015, there was about 7 families of farms got involved and did a holistic management course with John King. And so that's been the basis of it. And, we've revised those goals over a number of times since that. They always say that's a living document, which it certainly is. And as we've had others involved, with the farm, with the business, they have also had input into that, and so it has evolved with whoever's around working with us at the time. Yeah, it is a good document to have on our wall and kind of keep us on track.
Thanks for that, Greg. Rather than monopolising all of the questions, I saw Bruce was typing and then has obviously deleted what he was going to ask. I don't know. Bruce, did you have something that you wanted to sort of ask directly of Greg?
Yeah, no, I hadn't deleted it. I just had it sitting there waiting that I wouldn't stick it in there till it was, till time. But yeah, I wonder whether some of the other guys that are on here are really interested to know about, Greg, is when we're talking about re-energizing our farms, is what have you noticed? There's actually two parts to it. One of the things I heard you say was the race to the bottom. And, I just wonder whether people don't actually realise, how little, I asked Malcolm the same question last week, how little energy they actually have in their system. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that and because I think one of the important things is not waiting until we've hit the bottom. You don't need to wait till then, Charlie Arnott and all those guys that got this going really did have to hit the bottom before they did something. But the opportunity here is not to wait till you get to that stage. But what was it that you recognised that you needed or wanted to do about your farm?
Well, Bruce, I think for me, it really is a bit of a spiritual, personal evolution type process. As what's life all about? It comes down to that, and life is about life and the evolution and continuation of life. And humans, particularly people in the West, have just got the wrong story at the moment. This whole economic, infinite growth lunacy. But that's what people are living by, because that's what as the people are told, and what is through our media every day, is that we need to grow and we need to consume, and then realizing that there's so many cultures and that is not the primary objective of life. And so just switching from that story about what life's all about is what changes the way we do things on the farm. And and there's so much good learning, and because it becomes a real thirst for knowledge, and a bit of a shocker at with the technology that we've got these days, the amount of podcasts and audible books and things like that, with lots of diversity, looking at not just agriculture, but psychology is fascinating, and obviously human health issues and economics and energy, and just putting that all together, and just being energized and motivated by learning and doing more and working with life. That's the big
so
change.
Really, in a nutshell, start with the human, work on that first.
Yeah, what motivates you, what and again, even people in our modern consumer society, that the things that mean the most to them are perhaps the times they spend in nature, or with it's not about the stuff. And so there's a clue there that it's about relationships, both with other people and with nature. And so build from there, and wherever that takes each individual. And that's the beauty again of diversity. It's going to lead everybody on a different path, and diversity is resilience. And just that inspiration from like Charles Eisenstein and his book, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible. And so I think we've all got it in us. We've just been we are sort of struggling with the current culture, but that culture is breaking down, and it's so obvious for everybody who wants to see now. And so that opens up opportunities and a new way of doing things.
Cool. see a question there from Mike, but what do you want to comment? Because we'll jump straight into that one too. But do you want to comment briefly on what it's like living effectively with a foot in two camps? And we'll get into that sort of transition discussion in a minute. But when you're going through a process that's such that you've described, yet needing to maintain a focus on the bottom line and funding and all of those kinds of things, how has it been to reconcile those potentially, well, they are two different points of view, working with life in one sense, and the other system's relatively extractive on the whole life front, being able to reconcile those and stay motivated? How is that? Do you want to comment on that briefly, Greg?
Yeah, again, I think it comes down to personally, just finding peace within yourself, and just it is what it is, and not fighting it, but creating a profitable business in our current paradigm, but also knowing that if the oil boats stopped coming to New Zealand, then everything shut down, that we could still have a great life, appreciating that we're bloody lucky to live on a farm and live on the land, and still have access to food and a community around us and stuff like that. But again, I think it does start with personal peace, and until humans find more peace within ourselves, then we'll probably continue to try and create strife with others around the community and around the world. So I think if it's to be, it's up to me.
Emily, I can see the chat here. Do you want me to just ask Mike, or okay? Hey, looks like Mike Morgan, I think. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, Mike?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Greg. I'm just really interested in, you've obviously been working at this for quite some time. I know that you've probably had some events, nature-driven events, that have made you question whether you're on the right path over the years. And I just wondered if you'd like to talk a little bit about some of these challenges you've faced and how you got through them and how you stayed on track.
Thanks, Mike. I guess, the most recent one for Hawke's Bay farmers is Cyclone Gabriel. And more than anything, that just totally confirmed that we were on the right track. First of all, we had a good friend, Mike, come down and help us clean up. So thanks, Mike. As far as having people come and help, that sort of human support is amazing, and so appreciated. But then, basically we do have a forestry planting farm program for the farm, and the areas that we identified that needed trees, that's pretty much where all the erosion happened. And so that Cyclone Gabriel has just basically just prompted us to try and do even more as far as our tree planting program. And so again, straight after the cyclone, just realized that we need to get trees on those class 6, 7 steep hill country. And again, a door opened. It's crazy. We had 10 hectares of natives paid for us last year after King Charles's coronation. There was some money available, and so again, we're just the right place at the right time. We planted another 10 hectares of natives this year, and that was 75% funded by Hawke's Bay Regional Council as far as their erosion control programs. And I don't know how we're going to plant trees next year, but I think something will happen. And so those sort of events are really just confirming that we're on the right track. And then the other ones is a couple of years before that was a couple of big droughts, and just building resilience into the system through having a bit of a buffer and taking a wedge of feed into the summer, the longer rotations, taller pastures, cattle that can handle that sort of rougher tucker later in the summer. Those sort of systems have stood by us really well. And so for the last 4 or 5 years that we've been doing that, if it hasn't been a drought, there's been a flood, and we always catch up with that sort of wedge of feed that we take through into the summer, and yeah, by about right now, we're at our lowest pasture levels, for the year. Always sort of hits on the 1st of September, and but it's all set up and ready to grow again. So that's sort of how those sort of events verify, I think, that we're sort of heading in the right direction.
Thank you. That's great.
Thanks, Mike. Oh, looks like Kurt's typing. Kurt, do you want to just ask your question rather than type it there? Because I'd be really interested in some comment from you based on what you guys are doing down your way. So yeah.
No, so just before that, maybe we'll just move to putting a hand up if someone has got a question. So we'll save the time if you're finished with your questions and answers, Mike.
Yeah, I kind of have, and that's what I wanted to do, was really turn it over to the group to see what Greg could say, respond to their questions. So yeah. Just
stick a hand up. Yeah, good one. Cheers.
Yeah, okay, I'll carry on, Greg. So your shareholders, so if you had a 500 grand and you wanted to be a shepherd on your place or be a forestry harvester, you could invest and work on the land and, be part of that vision. Is that that's an option you've been talking about, Is that right?
Definitely. That hasn't come up yet, and the existing shareholders, nobody's wanting to sell their shares at this stage, but I can see that a way out for me to step back a bit is to find a manager that, I guess after a trial period would and then have the opportunity to buy in shares into the farm. So yeah, it's a pathway. It's not there yet, but we could certainly make it happen.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I keep thinking about that in our own situation of, if we find the right people, then how do we get them to come in as well and invest? So it's cool that you're sort of starting that. And I've got another question on soil carbon. Have you started monitoring that? And what do you do with it?
I think since you were up here with Darren Doherty in that workshop, I think it's 2019, for the last couple of years, we've had a ag research trial on the farm and looking at our holistic plan grazing. And so we've got an area that's been extensively monitored and tested, looking both at soil fertility and soil carbon. And the trial has been set up to look at our more bigger mobs, intensively grazed, moved more frequently versus what we're saying conventional, where the animals get shifted every 3 days. And we're 2 years into that, and it's a bit early there. There's been a few differences observed, but nothing significant yet as far as changes, in the soil. So hopefully that will continue. The initial trial was set up and paid for by McDonald's, and after 2 years, I think the funding's dried up, and with the science funding just drying up everywhere at the moment, I think there's a bit of a question whether or not it will even continue. But there's so much good base data there, and we're keen to carry on. We really enjoy this. Is working with Alec Mackay from Research in Palmerston North, who's a hell of a nice guy, and he did all the you guys will be aware, he did a lot of that fertilizer trial work at Ballantrae, and so he's got 30 years of experience and data there. But he remains a scientist, remains curious about what we're doing, which is around a lot lower input farming and gathering data. And so it's also in some silver pasture rows. So we've got rows of trees and the cattle graze between them, and it would be fantastic if over time, as those trees get bigger, to see what effect having the trees does, what that does to pasture growth rates. Would be really interesting to have some data on as well. But at this stage, it's just here's hoping that we can continue it.
Great. Hugh, looks like you've got a comment on that. as well?
Not so much on that specifically. And I guess one of the things that, I mean, Greg, obviously you've been through a massive mindset shift over a long period of time, and this has become part of who you are. But if we're looking to grow this at scale, which is obviously something that we're interested in by way of opportunity and changing the paradigm, basically, how do we, I mean, because there's so many things downstream that you've taken on within the boundary of your own making, if you like, around Mangarara. And yet many of the other people that we work with are still struggling, if you like, to take that shift, to think about that mindset shift and how they get confident enough, if you like, to start making some of those decisions so that we can start bringing some of this together at scale in a way that influences policy and changes some of those settings. Have you got any sort of comments or thoughts on that, or how that, because I know you get involved in quite a lot of that.
Yeah, I guess people are going to find it at their own time, and that's where the personal side of it goes. And yeah, there is, the support networks are out there, like this, and Quorum Sense and ODPG, and so the support there, and people are finding each other, and I guess learning from each other's experiences, and I guess just as I think, what is it? Often change only comes out of necessity. Necessity only comes out of crisis. I guess as the heat gets turned up more and more, people will be looking for alternative ways of doing things when they see whatever they're doing is no longer working. And for me, that is looking at input costs in the farming system and seeing where we can button off and change those. And so and I guess having good models of people that are doing things a little bit differently, that are quite happy with what's the way things are going, and happy to share that with others. And again, you'll know within this sort of regen movement, people are only too happy to share, and that's just part of creating more life, isn't it? Is because you're sharing what you're doing, and more people go out and replicate and learn from each other. That's just the whole ethos of the whole movement.
Just picking up on that, thanks, Hugh. Just picking up on that, what do you think's getting, probably perhaps being a bit provocative, what's getting in the way of the wider spread adoption of more of the farming with life, regenerating paradigm in the way that New Zealand agriculture or farmers really are thinking about their land? And the second part of that question is, what can we do to address that?
Well, again, I think that narrative is being questioned more and more these days, and that it is coming from big agribusiness and reductionist science and people wanting to sell farmers something. And although there's a lot of people thinking there's going to be a magic bullet, I think there's less and less buying into that at the moment and questioning it. And so if we could just have honesty and integrity through the media, and maybe we might get that if there's a change of government in America, and less of the censorship that's going on, and and saying what's happening to human health. A lot of those current narratives are going to get looked at a whole lot harder, and because it's heading in the wrong direction. And so if we don't change the way we're going, we'll end up where we're heading with something like that. So I just think it's those stuff that's being driven by corporate-owned media and research.
What can we do as people who are involved in that space to be supporting farmers who are looking at making this transition? What can we do better? What can we do better, do you think?
Well, I mean, I do appreciate, even Hugh, this being out there for, a small group of people, but, it just all ripples. And so, each one of you will be going out and doing what you do, and that will ripple out into communities. Quorum Sense and some of the videos, and, there is a lot happening now, and it's just stuff that is rippling out into the wider farming community. And so it's just each one of us doing what we do, and just being happy to talk to people and share it.
Great. Thanks for that. What about you, Nick? You must have something to ask. Sitting down there in the office. Sean, I can see you. Yeah, I have no further questions here other than asking the same question in a different way and getting off-piste into all kinds of other discussions. Does anybody else have anything else that they would like to ask before we pass back to Hugh? Looks like Mike Morgan has a question or a comment. Mike, do you want to jump into it?
Sure. Working in the the media side of things with Hugh and Mike, one of the things that we encounter often, particularly through social media, is a description that comes back at us as to counter the narrative, saying, yeah, you're just describing the way we've always done things. And that's a difficult one, because we know that it's not the way it's always been done. So what's a good way to counter that, in your opinion, where we can go back to those people that dismiss anything to do with regenerative as just traditional farming anyway?
Yeah, I guess I'd think about the inputs that we are using, or what they're using, and it's just, again, we talked about compromises for, but just being aware, I guess, of the consequences of fertilizer or chemicals that are being used in the system, that it all does have a consequence somewhere on the line, and it's looking also beyond our farm boundaries, because again, I think traditional farming, as we've done it, is basically, it's been a mining operation. If we're not mining phosphate from Nauru or now Morocco or wherever to keep our system going, we're also mining the fossil fuel energy that is driving the whole system. And so just being aware, perhaps even just beyond your farm gate, about where the inputs are coming from, and how sustainable those inputs are.
Thanks for that, Greg. Kurt, I can see you've got your hand up there, mate.
Yeah, another question, Greg. What's your view on Scope 3 emissions? Are you on board with it? Like, will you use it to, I don't know, give credits to your customers, or, or do you think it's a load of bullshit and trying to steer away?
Yeah, also, I think there's bigger issues that should be well down the track.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt.
Obviously it's not. It just seems like it's a diversion tactic, doesn't it, to take the focus off fossil fuels and what humans are doing. But yeah, maybe we have to live with it, and there are opportunities, I guess, within farming to offset through tree planting programs. But yeah, it's way overhyped, in my opinion.
Excellent. You've probably got about another 5 seconds before I start to say thank you to Greg and wind it up. So if you've got a question or a comment that you'd like to ask or to make, now would be the time to do that. Hugh has one.
Yeah, just before we kind of move on from that, and while Greg's still on the floor, I guess it's still, for me, it's a little bit like, where and how did you start? And I know this has been a real gradual process with you over a long period of time, but I guess what we're trying to do in terms of wrapping this up and speeding the process up is helping, it's how do you get out of the boat and into the dinghy, or vice versa. You've got to make that shift and that transition, and again, which a big part of that is kind of, as you identified, it's around ego, it's around mindset. but it's also potentially around having confidence that natural systems or nature or living actually is, regenerative is living, and regenerative systems are unique in that they can self-maintain and self-regenerate. So how did you make that mindset shift, really? And if you were advising other people or these people in this room who maybe are partway there and struggling, if you like, to make that shift and still considering things in part rather than in whole, how would you advise those people?
Well, I guess it's gaining the confidence to make changes through either doing smaller experiments on your farm where, I guess, ones that can fail and it's not going to put you out of business, or learning from what others are doing and applying what they're doing. Again, if it feels right, if it looks like it's going to make more profit for the system, then that's what's probably going to be the driver. But just experimenting. But people are only going to do that if they see the need or feel the need to make changes, and that depends perhaps on either their pain level with what they're doing currently, or a change of heart because they want to try and have a more positive impact. So experiment and learn from others.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. That's a really great question. I guess just to follow on from that too, to take the exact opposite tack, if you hadn't made the changes that you had made over particularly the last 15, 20 years, where do you think you would be now in terms of a farming system, and what do you think it would look like for Mangarara?
Who knows, Mike? No idea.
Yeah. Okay, that was probably a little bit unfair. Once again, Greg, I'm going to hand this back to Hugh in a second after I thank Greg very much on behalf of you guys for sharing the knowledge and wisdom and taking the risk really to talk about being vulnerable in an environment of experimentation and of opinions and lots of points of view around what regenerative actually is. It's so good to hear from someone who has taken those risks in thinking and has departed dramatically from the more conventional model around that, has a lifetime of wisdom, and I've certainly appreciated being able to talk with you about that. Look forward to doing that a lot more in the future. So Greg, thanks for talking today about re-energizing the system and some of the changes that you've made at Mangarara, and I'll pass it back to you, Hugh. Thanks very much.
No, thanks, Mike. Great session, and again, special thanks to Greg for taking the time and being so open and honest about some of the things that you've done and some of the learnings that you've done on behalf of everyone here and the others that will get the opportunity to watch this. And as I've said before, this is recorded. These recordings will be available to people who have registered, and also we'll have them up online in due course. We're pretty close to the end of where we were going anyway. I had a couple of things that I was going to show, but I don't think they're going to add to it now. It really is just reiterating a number of points that Greg's brought up, and again around context, around thinking about things as a whole and looking at things as a whole rather than pulling it apart and trying to consider things in part. I think increasingly we're finding those areas there, just creating context, being aware of what your context is, and then putting some time into that is fundamentally one of the most important things that you can do to help in this whole process of shifting in paradigm. Next week, Pablo Gregorini from Lincoln University is going to join us and sit in the hot seat to talk to us a little bit about some of his background. He's probably one of the most published professors in some of these systems that we work in, certainly in New Zealand, and he's had a really interesting background, but he's also doing some really interesting work, which I think links very much into how we, as farmers, we're about producing food. It would be nice to think that actually more and more of that was focused on health of the system that can produce food that ultimately becomes our medicine, and some of the work that he's doing at the moment. You know, we have a JV relationship with Lincoln and some of the things they're doing, and some of the work that's coming out and the detail that's coming out is really exciting. And so it'd be good. It'd be good to get him to share some of that, and but also talk more widely about some of the things they're doing, some of the things they're trying to get out of the farm that they've set, the future farm that they've set up at Lincoln University. It's really interesting. So that'll be 10 o'clock next Tuesday. So hope that we get you all back on that. And that's probably pretty much where we've gone to on that. And I mean, unless anyone's got any comments, any thoughts, anything that they just want to add to the discussion, that we can, we've got sort of 10 minutes. You've completely flummoxed them, Greg. Shut them all up. But no, it's been excellent. Really enjoyed it, and really enjoyed the listening. So, so I think we might as well call it a day there, and hope to see you all back next week, and for another sort of interesting session, a little different. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Greg, again. Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Good luck.
all for coming. Yeah.